Good afternoon, everyone. We hope you all enjoy the Emerge 2022, the Media Reset. We want to thank you once again for tuning in. We are fourth-year journalism students at Guelph-Humber. My name is Alexander Chanfereni.
I'm Jonina Charles.
I'm David Leo.
And I'm Bianca Di Felice.
And this is Metapod. It's a live podcast with podcasters about podcasting.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
The session will feature podcasters Michael Brown and Dean Hebscher.
Welcome to Emerge 2022. Thank you for tuning in into Metapod, a podcast about podcasts. This is Jonina Charles.
And I'm David Leo.
And we are joined today with Michael Brown, a podcaster, videographer, and the owner of Messenger Bag Media, as well as a former Guelph-Humber alumni. So thank you for joining us today, Michael.
So glad to be here. Excited to talk about podcasts.
Let's touch on Messenger Bag Media. So that's an independent, all-in-one media creation agency that caters to businesses looking to make a distinct media presence without breaking the bank. They offer social media management, recording assistance, hosting services, feed management, episode planning, consulting, and more. Is that a pretty good summation of your company?
I did write that, so I would say, yeah, it is.
It's a pretty good summation.
Yeah. I mean, like, so with my business, I do a lot of videography, graphic design, podcasting, websites. Like, those are probably the biggest things, but, you know, yeah, that's probably like the biggest stuff about my business that I do.
We're in the journalism program. Me, Jonina, as well as a few other students, we are making a podcast. Our podcast is called Varsity Clues, Campus Myths and Legends.
Mm-hmm.
So we focus on
good title.
Right?
Good title.
That was a student. We had like
Suggestion,
a
yeah.
student suggestion, so we sent that out to the students in the program, and that title stuck out to the whole group, and we were like, fantastic, that's a great title. So if you couldn't tell by the title, our podcast is about urban legends, myths, conspiracies on campuses
in Ontario.
around
Yeah.
Ontario. Yeah.
Mm.
Did you you didn't work on any podcasts when you were here, did you? Did they have anything?
Not that was through GH, but at the time, yeah, I was doing a podcast. So I don't know, like, I mean, podcasting, I've done podcasting since like 2006 in various capacities. So yeah, I mean, like 16 years of podcasting here, right? Like it's really, I can't believe podcasts have been around for that long, even slightly longer than that. But like, yeah, at the time I was doing a video game related podcast that was called Video Game Realness. So it was myself, 3 other friends, and we were like a gay gaming podcast was like kind of our thing. And we did it for 5 years, and it got really big. Like, I don't know, I have such funny stories about that show where, like, yeah, in that community, we became like very well known, where I have been stopped on the street where someone was like, "Are you Michael from Video Game Realness?"
No
My
way.
friend was in Chicago.
Wow.
Someone stopped him and was like, "Oh, are you?" Right? And like
Wow.
that sort of stuff. One time I went to a cottage weekend and met someone I didn't know there who was like, "Oh yeah, I know who. Yeah, you're Michael from Video Game Realness." So like we
Wow.
really found a niche there
Yeah.
and just kind of kept going for years, and it was really great. So that was what I was doing at that time.
Yeah, so like how did you like, I guess you guys came up with that niche? Like you guys just, how did you guys like find each other basically?
Well, we were just 4 friends who, like, we would always go out like on Friday nights for dinner and drinks, like pretty much every Friday. And then it was E3, which is a big gaming convention, and we were like, "Oh, you know, like, why don't we just do a podcast?" Right? And this was pre the like really big boom of podcasts that exists today. And yeah, so we just decided to do that podcast to kind of get started. We were like, there are lots of gaming sites that have a podcast, but there aren't a lot of gay kind of focused, like, and it's not like we covered gay games. We just talked about games in a really gay way, like, you know.
Representation is important.
Yeah, and like, you know, Drag Race was not nearly as popular as it is today, but it was like, you know, just it was a fun time. We did that, and we just kind of covered it every week, and we got like a lot of people, like, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of people like would listen to our show over the course of the time we had it. So
How did that feel, like your audience growing, people actually coming up to you
Well, that was so funny because we spent $0 on that
Wow.
podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't spend any money on advertising. We didn't spend any money on anything. We just did it, and we found our audience. I think primarily through Reddit
Okay.
was how we started. You know, we just like shared it into some subreddits that were sort of related-ish to our topic, and yeah, they found it. They liked it. They came back. It's so funny because in 2021, in the summer of 2021, we did another episode for the first time in like 3 and a bit years. And we still had a few hundred downloads. Like because we said to people when we were kind of ending it, keep us subscribed. Like we might drop something in here. And yeah, we did. And people clearly still have us like in their feeds. So that was kind of funny.
So you've been podcasting now, you said, since about 2006, I believe you said.
Yeah, in some capacity or another. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like just around the time that podcasting kind of became a thing. I don't know.
They're being introduced around. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
I'm not too
Yeah.
familiar on the exact year of the.
Yeah, when it kind of
Formalization of
happened.
the-
Well, yeah, so like RSS feeds are kind of what like podcasts are kind of based on RSS feeds, right? So that stands for really simple syndication, and it's a feed that like any site or whatever can put out, and then you can use like a feed parser or whatever to kind of see the episodes, and then that's what's, you know, that's what your podcast feed is sort of reading, is an RSS feed, and that kind of led to the beginning of that. But it wasn't until Apple added podcasts to iTunes in 2005 that things really kicked off, because until that point it was like this thing that you had to put a lot of time to find a way to get this onto
yeah.
whatever it is that you had. But when Apple added that, and it's not the way it was today, right? Like remember, for years you had to like download iTunes, sync your like iPod to iTunes. So like it wasn't like, oh, it just automatically shows up on your device. It was like every week when your podcast came out, you had to, you know, plug in your old like 30-pin connector to the bottom of your iPod and then like sync that and go. So yeah, it's like really different from what it is now. But that was what started probably the initial push of podcasts and the way that people know them today, and why Apple is still so well known in regards to them. In 2005, right, the New Oxford American Dictionary named podcasting like the word of the year. It was kind of, and it was so funny because for a few years it felt like podcasts had kind of peaked by like 2008. And I remember starting some podcasts, you know, around that time and thinking like, oh man, like I missed the ground floor of podcasting, right? Like, and if you were in on the ground floor and you were good, it's like YouTubers and all of that stuff, right? But then podcasting got really popular a few years later. Like it had a popularity, but not in the mainstream way that it does now. And that is really funny because what led to that was Serial, right? Are you guys familiar with Serial, like the podcast Serial about like murder, like whatever?
Oh, I
Like-
was
like
110%
NPR?
convinced that you were talking about Cheerios right
Yeah,
now.
no, yeah.
Serial,
breakfast food.
Serial.
that.
Okay.
Yes, and that podcast, which was produced by NPR, is what led to like the blow up of podcasts as we kind of know today, because it was what made businesses and celebrities kind of realize that they could make serious money through advertising and sponsorship deals. Since then, things have only gotten more and more popular. And then, you know, I'll just say it, but I'm not saying a thing wrong one way or another. But like, yeah, so you had Joe Rogan's podcast began in 2009, right? But it was really in like 2015 that show started to see its success.
Popping off, yeah.
Exactly. And then, you know, in kind of our journey of podcasting to getting where we are today, it was in 2017 that Spotify started making its push into podcasting. And they purchased a major podcast hosting platform called Anchor in 2018. So they were kind of like building the arsenal, starting that stuff, right? Trying to come for, not that Apple was making money from podcasts, but the mind share of podcasts was with Apple, right? And then in 2020, Spotify signed Joe Rogan to like exclusive
A massive
like,
deal.
deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then that was probably the start of the fragmentation we're seeing now, where you've got things that are exclusive here and exclusive there, and then they're on Audible or Apple Podcasts or whatever, like these sorts of things. And then around the same time, like in 2021, Apple launched the ability to have like subscriptions that are paid in their Apple Podcasts. app. So it was like specialized content, or you could have an ad-free feed if people paid like a $5 subscription, or you could become an Apple exclusive podcast. But Apple themselves doesn't pay for exclusive podcasts the way that Spotify is done. So that's kind of the whole rigmarole journey of how podcasting kind of got to be where it is today from where it started. I would really say in like 2005 when Apple added the ability to submit your podcasts to the iTunes store and to put them on your iPod. I think a lot of great podcasts are born out of just a good rapport with a friend that you sit around already talking about something and you think, why don't we just put this out into the world? So we were just like drinking one Friday night, talking about the show, and then we're like, oh yeah, he was one of the ones I did Video Game Realness with. And we said, let's just, we've got the microphones. Yeah, let's just like do this podcast. And we did. And then all of the contestants on the show listened to it. And we were like,
Wow.
What did we say? And anyway, but then we kind of, cleaned it up, got a little more professional, and still have the same amount of fun. And we've been doing that for, I guess, 5 years now. And that's been a lot of fun. And the fact that the contestants listen to it, that we have had people listen to our show, listen to the interviews with the contestants, and then later get on to the actual TV show and say they listened to our podcast and got tips from our podcast on what to do when they were competing is kind of crazy.
Wow.
So that's an interesting one. And then, now at this point I do a lot of like producing of podcasts for various clients of mine as well.
Speaking of producing, do you think there's been a shift in the type of media content being produced from when you first started in the industry to now?
Yes. Like in what way are you kind of talking about? Because I definitely think so.
So, okay, let's say maybe even the fact that like there's so many different streaming services now to be able to, do you think that affects the kind of podcasts people make nowadays?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more podcasts. I think after that boom with Serial, the podcast,
Not the
Not
chew.
the
not the breakfast,
Not the breakfast food.
No. Yeah, I think the boom since Serial has led to, there are a lot of brands that have found big success through podcast advertising because it's kind of, think about when people are listening to podcasts mainly. It's in a commute, it's on a regular schedule, and it's just in their ears. And normally you're like too bothered doing something else to try and fast forward an ad. So it's just sitting in your ears, right? So I think that it's led to the ability to monetize podcasts, which has led to more and more people creating podcasts. And yeah, it's also just an interesting way to do storytelling. Like, sometimes it's just the regular people sitting around a table, like talking. And then sometimes it's the more like narrative, journalistic, whatever. Like one of my favorite podcasts is called, so I think it's just called Making now, but it was originally called Making Oprah. And it was like 6 episodes about the Oprah Winfrey Show, how she got her start, kind of specifically Chicago focused. And it's multiple interviews and narrative and storytelling and all of this, like the way you would watch like a docu-series, but as a podcast. And I just thought that it was so cool and it's so engaging because the audio really brings you in. So yeah, I think that we've evolved from just the straight up internet talk radio angle of it, but it's continually getting, it's like it's continually changing. There's so many different ways that people are podcasting now. But I wonder when it's going to reach the saturation level. I wonder. I think we're probably going to see people move away from the continuous forever podcast. Every week we're here. And they're probably going to get a little more like, it's probably going to reach a point of, here's 6 episodes, really highly curated, and then we'll see you in 6 months,
So, when you're making a podcast, what kind of platform do you use? Like, do you have a preferred platform that you go through when like recording, editing, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. So I think first and foremost, the best podcasts are produced in the same physical space, right? Like, this will be a better podcast than if we were all sitting on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
There is delay. That sucks. You can't see the same body language and all of that stuff. So I think that that's like first and foremost. And I think that that was what was really big about video game realness was we were 4 friends sitting in the same room around a table. And that was like a big deal. Cause at that point there were way more. Yeah. It was like internet based and everything. And there was just that. And that was like, you know, pre-pandemic, pre-Zoom even. And just like, the AV stuff was like way more delayed. So you could hear the difference. The audio quality wasn't as good that way. You can get better quality audio this way and just develop that rapport. So I think that you know, that's probably the biggest thing in terms of what I use.
I know you mentioned GarageBand before, but there are a multitude of.
Yeah, I don't use GarageBand anymore. I
Yeah.
actually, well, because through my work, I do a lot of video editing. I have Final Cut Pro, and you can just edit audio in Final Cut. I know that there's like, you know, other like applications, and like there's like Logic Pro is I think like Apple's one or whatever. I don't use Logic because I just already know Final Cut, and I can edit all the stuff, and I have all my like audio effects that I can properly apply to like get rid of, you know, background noise, reduce echo, things like that. So I just edit in Final Cut, which is probably like not what most people do.
So what kind of equipment do you believe is best to use as someone new to podcasts?
Well, when you're starting out, okay, so, and it's probably dating myself a bit because I don't know exactly where you find these, but if you still have them lying around, do you guys remember like Guitar Hero,
Yeah.
Rock Band, right? Do you remember like the
I
Rock
loved
Band?
Rock Band.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you probably, well, maybe, I don't know, have like one of the microphones from Rock Band still kicking around somewhere, and it's like a USB microphone.
Mhm.
Best way to start out if you want to spend $0 or like next to $0. I mean, again, if you literally just want to use what you have lying around, Rock Band microphones. Like that was Video Game Realness started with 4 Rock Band microphones sitting around, each holding it, and like because the audio quality was so much better than anything in a laptop
Wow.
at the time, like just hands down. And you could find them everywhere because again, in 2013, that was after the Rock Band craze. So just video, like you could just like walk into like an EB Games or whatever, and they just had like a bucket, and you'd be like, great, oh, I'm gonna buy 4 of these. They're $250 each, like, you know. No problem.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's the best thing. I mean, you could use your phone. I just am getting a new computer, so I can't speak to the built-in microphones on like a new MacBook. They probably have improved, you know, over the last few years. The microphones on your phone are pretty decent. Again, if you're looking to spend like $0, right? That would be a good one. I would also say that, I don't know, it just depends if you want to keep it cheap, like those are some good options. And if you want to spend a bit of money, I mean, I think a lot of people use like a Blue Yeti like microphone. You probably see that in like the YouTube videos like that, or I think sometimes there's like a Shure microphone or whatever, and they pull it in on their little stand and they got their LED strip of lights and whatever, right? Like, you know it. So there's that. I use something called Deity D3 Mic. It's about like, it's not cheap. It's like $380 or something like that. But it's not 2000, and like microphones go up that high. So this thing has like the best audio quality. It's so good. I can use it in video shoots, or I can use it for podcasting. And that's what I like love about this thing. It's it doesn't have like an XLR input. Like, you know, we're using really nice fancy microphones here, probably not what most people are going to be buying, and that's why we sound so great. But they use XLR inputs, which means you've got to have some sort of like receiver like this that's bigger. And so the nice thing about the Deity D3 is it's just like a 3.5 millimeter like headphone jack input, so you can plug it into, you know, anything. Yeah, or then like I use a Zoom H1 handy recorder as like my recording device to receive the audio, and then the Deity's plugged into that. So yeah, those are some of the things that I use. But like a a Blue Yeti, whatever. I think it's the Yeti. That's a good one. I think it's like $120. It's USB based. It's totally good. Video game realness was done on a Blue Yeti for like 4 years. We just had that first year we did
Through the Rock Band mics.
through the Rock Band mics. Just a series of 4 of them. We're all sitting around and huddled. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Coming into this interview today, I was not like, if you were to ask me things that were going to be brought up on the show today, I think Rock Band mics might be very close to the bottom because, wow, that's a major throwback, right? I honestly didn't even know, like, I wouldn't have expected that personally.
That's what I started using for back when I did No More Gamecasts back in like, this was like 2008, 2009. So in the height of the Rock Band Guitar Hero craze, just use that because I was like, oh, my laptop sounds so crappy. Like, why am I using this, right? So then just thought, well, I mean, it's a USB microphone. Like, let's just try it. And, you have to learn how to use some of the stuff anyway. Like, you have to learn how to change the input. If you plug it in, your computer might not automatically change that mic input. So you do have to spend a bit of time, like, plan it out. Make sure you're not in, like, the world's most echoey room. I would say that that's probably, like, the biggest thing. And, but they're seriously fine. I'm not going to say, oh, wow, blow your mind. Like, they're so good. No, they're not. But they're way better than like the default, thing that's in your laptop.
They'll get the job done, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also brings you in a little more because you're holding the microphone, right? As long as you don't forget to like go to the side. Like if you're going to the side constantly and you forget you're holding one, that's not useful. But if you're remembering, it's going to get all the right audio and it kind of brings you in a little bit more, especially when you're starting out, because some people get a little timid and they, as I'll demonstrate, they get a little further away from the microphone, and you kind of want to be like right up by the mic.
What do you enjoy about podcasting? And then like, what are some things that maybe you not the greatest, not the biggest fan of with podcasting?
I think that, what do I love about podcasting? Well, yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's something that's kind of, a lot of people listen to podcasts in a routine, and you get to really get to kind of know the people that you're listening to. Sometimes it's topics that you hear about that you wouldn't normally think to read on, but when you hear it audio, like it can change your opinion of people in really big ways when you can actually hear them talking about it. I just like really think that podcasts are like a lot of fun. There's so many to listen to, and I feel like sometimes people feel like, oh my God, it's overwhelming the amount of podcasts that exist. But it's just about finding what you like, and I'd say probably really just finding something that you like and just like sticking with that specific podcast, right? Otherwise you're going to be inundated. Like, yes, everyone's got a recommendation for a podcast because everyone and their brother has a podcast now. But I also wouldn't say, don't let that deter you. If you want to start a podcast, you should still do it. The barrier to entry is exceptionally low. I was talking about the GarageBand mics or other mics, and you can spend more money on it, but just do it. Just like press record and start doing something. Because again, I keep going back to video game realness, but we did that for so many years, and I can listen to early episodes and later episodes, and the early episodes are like, sound so bad. Like we had like an episode 0 where that was like pre-Rock Band mic, right? And it sounds so bad, but we still developed an audience, because I think one of the biggest things with podcasting is consistency, right? So what do I dislike about a podcast? If you are doing the podcast yourself and you're doing something that has to react to something on a weekly basis, it is an hour or more or whatever of your life every single week that you have to do, you have to research. It's very draining to feel like something happens in perpetuity forever, which I guess that's the same thing. But like, I don't like that. So that's where I kind of think you're seeing more podcasts, like I previously mentioned, getting into that episodic, like it's a specific, like we're coming at these topics for this number of weeks. You can now properly label things as seasons and episodes in a season in the podcast platforms. So that's really helpful. So you can kind of distinguished to your guests. Like, that's what I love about doing the Cooling Rack, the one about the Great Canadian Baking Show, is because we only have to do it for 8 weeks a year, right? When there's a new season of the Great Canadian Baking Show, we react to it each week. And so for 8 weeks, yeah, every week I got to put in all this time. We're recording, we're watching the show, editing, putting it out there, all of that stuff. But then after 8 weeks, it's done. And then I get to go like, oh, great. Now I get to get re-excited about doing it the next time. But if I was doing it for 52 weeks a year, I would probably lose steam sooner. So think about what your process would be like for it.
Do you have any like specific ways of engaging your audience?
Well, like, I definitely think that having some amount of social media presence is like useful. The thing I found that's the best for gaining an audience, and it's so difficult because like, but okay, so Reddit and various subreddits that are devoted to very specific communities are a good way of getting your stuff out there. It's just that a lot of subreddits are like, no self-promotion, and then you just have to kind of be like, I found this podcast. It's really
someone.
great, right? But like, you just like come up with a fake username and it's not yourself, and then you just like post and you're like, man, this is so funny. These guys are so hysterical. I really love this thing. And then just like hope no one somehow traces it back to you, right?
Mhm.
Like, that is really good, but it's like it's not easy. Like, the biggest thing is consistency. Yeah, putting it out there. Finding ways to get it in front of people. So like Reddit is the easiest way to do that, but still having stuff on social media is really good. You can be around a specific topic that isn't just general. So for the Great Canadian Baking Show, we've got a built-in audience of people who watch the show. Now come listen to our recap of it, listen to our interviews with the bakers. So the show itself retweets us, tags us in posts. Like, you know, we can use hashtags related to that show, and people are monitoring those hashtags, and then that's how they find their way to us. So in pretty much all of the podcasts I've done, especially personally, $0 spent, just all kind of word of mouth, social media dissemination, et cetera, et cetera.
Just give us like a rundown of some of the things that you accomplished here.
Yeah, I'd say like Emerge was definitely the biggest thing. Definitely. So I think we won like 24 awards.
Wow.
So we won like Pinnacle Awards and Columbia, like, Columbia Media. We won awards from Columbia. And yeah, like, not just like, oh, like bronze, whatever. Like, we won like gold, and we won, you know, Magazine of the Year from the College Media Association. Like, it was big stuff. And like, I got to go to Philadelphia for like the awards thing and everything.
Wow.
And at that point, we didn't know we'd won. We knew we were nominated and finalists, but then being there, oh my God, I like so vividly remember this moment. Being in the thing, and they are like getting to our category, and they'd announced some other things, and it was like, oh yes, okay, we won gold in that, right? But when it came to Magazine of the Year, and as editor-in-chief, like, it's like
that's
your
a
baby,
big
you
deal.
put in
That's
all
a
of this
huge
stuff.
deal.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm there, and they're going through the what was it, like, third place is this, and you're like, okay, it's not us. That means like we're either like silver or gold. But then the way that they announced it was that then they said silver. So when silver came out, I was literally like, oh my God, that means we won gold. Like, I still, like, you probably heard in my voice there, couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that we beat out all of these, you know, big U.S. schools. And Guelph-Humber is really great. It's not the biggest school, though, right?
Mhm.
We certainly weren't well known.
Mhm.
And I think it was like a big surprise to a lot of people. And I was so happy.
I think that still holds true to this day. Like, I tell people like where I go, I'm very proud to like come here, but it's kind of like, oh, like, where is that? And I'm like,
Or
oh,
they go, oh yeah, Humber, and you're like, no,
No, no, no.
Guelph-Humber.
Guelph-Humber.
Yeah,
that's the, yeah. Do you have any, like, give us one story from the from that year that sticks out in your head?
Oh, okay. You know what? I still think we did such a good job with this. We did a story that was all about Bitcoin, right?
Wow.
And so we did it back in 2014. And at that point, it had really come up in value. And it was so funny because maybe like 6 months after or whatever, the value really started to tank on Bitcoin. But we were writing about it in like a really serious, like it was such a good investigative piece. And we had this whole timeline sidebar. And it was just like such an in-depth piece that like you didn't even see in big mainstream sources that provided all of this background and kind of predictions on where it was going to go and everything. And then Bitcoin kind of left the mainstream consciousness for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and then came back roaring in 2018. And then you started seeing the same pieces again about what is Bitcoin, what, blah, 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 right? And I was like, we did this years ago, and we were just students doing it. Like, it's so crazy. So I'm so proud of that story still. And that was like a major collaborative effort. We had so many people had to kind of pitch in on all of these aspects of the story because it was so big. But yeah, we used like whatever that room is, the main like kind of journalism sort of like room there. We had all of our spreads up on the wall. I remember, just being here like evenings, weekends, like just so much time like for it, just putting in so much effort. But it was such a big team effort. And that core group of us that saw it through to the end, because, as the closer you get to graduation and like grades start to come in, people just start to drop off, right? And we were like, no, this is beyond a school thing. This is like a me thing. This is like a my career starts here thing. And that was a really, really big one.
And I'm glad you guys got to see the payoff after as well, right? That's something that, some people, maybe it doesn't go that way for some other people, but you know what, for you, and I'm glad that you guys end up getting to see that full payoff. Like, that's really special.
Yeah, I just, when I first came to, so when I think it was my first year at GH, they were celebrating, I think, their 10th anniversary, right? Because this was 2011 into 2012. So it was like their 10th anniversary. I think they started in 2002 or something like that. So at that point, they had like 10th anniversary, and they were really, I kind of felt like looking for students to kind of like set the program up, like a recruiting tool, things to show to get new students to come. And I remember thinking, like, can you imagine if you do something good enough that the school wants to use it to bring students to come here, or even crazier, that it brings students to come here. It's not even the school, the students see it and they go, oh my God, I want to do that. So it was a really big thing for me. I wanted to do that. And I came and spoke to other classes of students years after I graduated. And I remember one year someone said to me, your Emerge was the reason I decided to come to this school.
Wow.
And it was like, that's pretty crazy. It's really cool. Like, I still just love that. And I love that we did that.
We can fast forward to present day times now. You are, as we said, the owner of Messenger Bag Media. Tell us a little bit more about the company, what it's looking like for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so weird, like having your own business. Although I kind of always thought I would, right? Like for years I was like, I want to do that, but how do you do it, right? And the big piece of advice I would say is like, for most people, don't do it right after graduating. I didn't, right? You need the time to be working, to experience what it's like in an organization or a few different places, right? Like I worked on a lot of different contracts over like a period of time. And so I got to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
You get to make contacts and all of that stuff. So that's really key, because then when I started my business, so I reached out to those places and they were pleased with the work I'd done when I was there, that they then said like, yeah, of course we want to use you for this. And I kind of got the feeling from so many places that they were looking for someone to do really good work, but they couldn't hire them full time, or they didn't need them full time. So for me coming in saying, yeah, just scoop a little here, scoop a little there, do this, do that. You have to be really good at time management. Although it's a very good motivator when you're your own boss, because if you don't do the work, you don't get paid, because your reputation is even more important in that situation. So yeah, it's been an interesting few years. It's been great. I'm really happy with where I'm at. I love being my own boss. I love the clients that I work for. I have people who work for me, not in full-time capacities, but like, where I can help pay people's bills. Like, that's kind of crazy to me. Like, so it's really nice. And yeah, I just love it. I love working for all of the different organizations because sometimes they're really big companies. Sometimes they're just individual businesses. And yeah, every day is different. And it's fun just to get to do that.
What are your intentions now for Messenger Bag moving forward? Like, what aspirations do you have for it?
I feel like right now I'm at this weird inflection point of I want to bring someone else in to assist. And if I had that person there, well, sorry, I do have someone who actually does work for me, but it's on one specific client and she does an amazing job. But in like a general sense, if I could bring someone in, then I feel like I could bring on more work. Because right now it's just, when do I find the time to do all of this? Like, what evening am I going to have to put in here? What weekend do I have to do this shoot on, And still maintaining like a life balance. So I'm at this point where I want to expand, but it's the question of when you expand, then you are making less money technically, because then you're paying someone to do some of the work, but then that leads to more work. But when do you decide to do that? Because if you do it too early, you can bog yourself down. You could make less money potentially. But if you wait too long, maybe you're not growing at a rate that you could because you just physically can't do it all yourself. So what's next? I don't know.
You're just going with the flow for now?
I'm just going with, what I'm doing. I would really like to expand. What I would really like is some young new grad who's super energetic to come and work for me and prove that they're really good at what they do and I can still pay them well, and then it expands into like a full-time opportunity. That's what I want.
How do you think the mandates going forward are going to affect the media landscape as a whole?
Well, I think media is definitely being affected in some ways. The weird thing is like largely safe for probably that initial lockdown when like literally like everything was fully locked down, like no one did anything. Media production's been allowed to continue the whole time, right? Through like proper safety measures. Like, I've been able to keep filming for clients, doing stuff for clients, in-person stuff, wearing a mask. I have to do COVID tests at some of the shoots that I do, depending on the size or what client or that sort of a thing. I mean, I want to be able to just keep working, so I'll do what I've got to do it. I kind of hate wearing a mask because it's so warm. And sometimes when you're like doing a billion things, it just gets warmer and warmer. But I want to keep working and I want to keep my clients safe and I want to be safe. So I'll keep doing whatever I need to do to do that. In terms of how it's going to affect stuff going forward, hopefully the effect becomes less and less, and we're just slowly headed toward where we used to be,
So-called like greener pastures, basically.
I think so.
Like...
Yeah, I hope so. It's really hard to say, and I'm not a doctor. So for me, I'll keep doing whatever I have to do to make my clients feel safe, to follow whatever public health measures that I do. But yeah, I really hope that we can just kind of be back to the typical thing, and when we can do a podcast without our masks here, right? Like that would be great. But I get it, right? We're just excited to be able to do things again. And if this is what it means to be out there, then that's fine with me.
Honestly, Michael, thank you for the time that you've given us today.
Yeah, it's been so fun. Thanks for having me. And keep listening to podcasts. I'll plug a couple things here.
Go right ahead.
So I produce a podcast for one of my clients, Magazines Canada. The podcast is called Audio Mag. You may have already listened to an episode because I interviewed Guelph-Humber's own Kathy Elliott for an episode back in September. So I definitely recommend giving that one a listen. And also, you should listen to one of our most recent episodes, which is with Mary Weens from CBC. And it's about how to conduct interviews as a storyteller. It's like such a useful hour of your life. Like, listen to it. It's so good. All students, listen to that episode. Mary has years of experience working at CBC, and she gives such useful advice, and it's such a candid conversation. So listen to that for sure.
I guess we could also plug our podcast.
Phenomenal.
So that again is Varsity Clues, Campus Myths and Legends. You can find that on the Emerge Magazine website. So that would be emergemagazine.ca, if I'm not mistaken. This has been an Emerge podcast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
All right. Welcome to the 2022 Emerge Metapod session. I'm Alexander.
And I'm Bianca Di Felice.
And we are members of the Emerge 2022 podcast, Varsity Clues. So today we have a very special guest with us to discuss tips and tricks on how to make a successful podcast. We have Dean Hebscher with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so Dean, we have seen that you have like a huge following on social media platforms, and your podcast, the Clean Hamster Podcast, has done very well. So tell us how this all started, and when was the moment that you found that you peaked in your career?
It all started because in 2017, I was talking a lot to people on the phone and at work and getting distracted by my long-winded conversations and just overall, like, I was just a really chatty person, and I was like, I need to channel this somewhere else. So I started doing a podcast because I was also well-versed in the stand-up community of Toronto and whatnot, and I was like, on my downtime, I should do something. And I was also really inspired by a lot of comedy podcasts that I listened to, that I've been listening to since like 2013. And I was like, I could do that. I have like tons of stories I would love to tell and share and whatnot, like from childhood, adolescence, and beyond. So it started in 2017, and I've been doing it pretty much every week since.
Where did the name come from?
The word clean in all lowercase letters, if you squint, looks like the name Dean in all lowercase letters. And
True.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
And hamster is what a kid in third grade thought my last name was at first glance.
Where did you like start to realize like, damn, I'm funny?
Oh, and like the fact that I have such a quick
My
answer
whole
for that
life.
is
It's like my whole life.
In
I've
fact,
been
like
funny my whole life.
most people would be like, huh,
It started
give me
when
a
I was
minute on
2.
that. No, straight up, I'm like, I know the exact moment. It was just like saying something at school and like knowing, I'm like, by the end of this sentence, I know most of my friends will laugh. Like just knowing. And also keeping at a young age, like being like, oh, I can keep like friends of mine who are also my age, like captivated enough to like hear the end of my story. That's crazy because the attention span of children is insane. So the fact that like they would wait till the end because there was a possible laugh coming, I gauged that pretty quick.
Where are like the advantages and disadvantages in a podcast?
I think it's like
We'll start with like the advantages of a podcast.
For sure.
Having a podcast, yeah.
It's therapeutic, I think. I think it's a lot of fun to just, because I've done the episodes of my podcast in the worst mood in the world. And I'm like, something could be there. And I like being real like that. I like understanding that there's people who are like, no, like, don't stop, like, you know, just because you're not in a good mood. Like, be you. It's fine. And I've gotten a good response from that. Like, I've done episodes where I'm so angry. And people are like, thanks for still recording that, man.
So does consistency matter? Like if you're talking about one topic and you just
You like
switch it up,
change it up.
like in one episode, you try to keep a similar theme?
I think that like whatever's happening in my life currently, I go off about first, and then I like sprinkling in like childhood stories or teenage, stories, and like a crazy story, something that I'm annoyed about. People seem to enjoy it when I get pissed off about something.
So you said you communicate with your audiences about different stuff. Like you said, they got messages on social media about these things that have happened. Do you actually engage like during the podcast, or is that like post-production?
Sometimes I put out like a thing on Instagram, like if you want advice. I usually do advice segments because I like, I don't know. I like challenging myself like that because sometimes there are things that I get messages about that like I can't even say into a microphone. Like, you know what I mean? Like someone's like, think of the craziest thing that's been sent to me for sure. And I'm like, I can't even read this on the mic. Like I can't give you advice for this. Like I'll respond off camera. That's crazy. I hope you're doing okay. That kind of thing. But other experiences from people that are like all around our age, people usually ask me like, hey, like how do I get ready for like post college or like this or that? And I'm like, oh, I love that because I'm still kind of in that. I'm 26. I'm just ending ending like that reset area of like young adulthood.
So what do you think, like being on social media, what is the biggest platform right now to like advertise yourself? Like if you want to advertise a podcast or maybe a channel, like what do you
It's-
think? I would say TikTok.
I would say
don't know.
TikTok and Instagram.
Really? Instagram still, you think?
TikTok is so like fast moving.
Yeah, do you have any advice for newly started
Let's do advice
podcasters?
for
Okay.
Yeah.
I think like I'm sure you guys could have figured this out. It's like the idea of starting a podcast is better than the reality.
Mhm.
Because I've seen, you know how many abandoned podcasts there are out there? Like 10 billion maybe? There's so many, like I know a lot of people who like started a podcast that did 3 episodes and they're like,
I don't like it.
because they got impatient probably. Or whatever, like maybe they realized that their chemistry wasn't as good as they thought it was or something like that. Also, starting a podcast with someone is tougher than starting it by yourself. It's just like,
Really?
yeah, because like you got to be on each other's schedules. You got to be on this. You gotta, like, oh, we're gonna record today. Oh, I can't next week. Can we do this day? Like it just that always happens. People are humans. Like, you know, stuff gets in the way.
Yeah.
You got to be on it. If you're serious, you got to dive in fully. That's what it is. Someone told me that once about YouTube. So and it transfers to other things. I also tried to be a YouTuber and I stopped because I didn't want to do commentary anymore. So
Yeah.
I could also be not knowing what I'm saying at all. Like, I'm not saying I'm the smartest person. I don't have everything figured out at all. I'm just out here trying my best, I guess.
Well, that's good to know because I'm like stressed
Yeah.
about like graduating. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should get my smart serve. Maybe I should go here. Maybe I
Yeah.
should go there.
There's nothing wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with like things to do in the meantime. But like, if you're dead serious about like one thing,
Do it.
do not have a backup plan. Like, just go for it.
So when you like do your like podcast episodes, do you like plan like, okay, this Tuesday I'm gonna talk about this topic, or do you just kind of hop on the mic and say
I used
right.
to do that. I used to just like
plan it out?
press record and be like, and scramble to like start finding something to talk about. But now if I like have a conversation, like everything I've ever written down is based in a conversation I've had with someone. And it's kind of lame and like super self-indulgent, but like if I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine and like I say something that makes them laugh, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna talk about that in the podcast for sure. That's literally what happens. Or like if I remember a thing from childhood, I write it down in my notes app or on a piece of paper, and then it's just I have a list of things that I want to talk about, and that's how it goes. But it's never like I used to wing it, but now I'm definitely prepared. And sometimes the days are different too. I'll record on a Sunday night or a Thursday morning. Like I don't know anymore because sometimes it's a feeling. I've started episodes where I'm like no, and I've pressed off and just been like not today. I can't do it. It's not
Yeah.
happening. Like I'm not
You
there.
have to be like in.
I'm not there. I need something to
be
eat or like I need to
motivated.
go for a walk or something. I'm dehydrated, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just can't do it.
How'd you get into
How did you
that?
get into like branding and getting like your manager and all that stuff?
My manager, I got him because he is the manager of my good friend Curtis, who is incredibly popular content creator, and I went to school with him, and also my friend Jacob, also a very popular content creator. We've all like had like life-changing experiences in the past like 3 years with our stand-up tours and our internet presence, and because of that. Our friend Curtis, he had management, and then his management reached out to Jacob and I because we're kind of like a trio. We do stuff together all the time, whether it's videos or stand-up or podcasts. His manager reached out to us and was like, I'll sign you guys because I trust my client. And that's pretty much how it happened, and it's been great because we've had a lot of incredible opportunities from that. And there's people on the management team who are in charge of like, you know, merch and stuff like that. So I had they put me in touch with like a really cool designer, an artist, and I just come up with ideas and stuff and like do drawings and whatnot, and I like to see certain things come to life, and they end up on t-shirts sometimes, and now I sell them. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's so much behind the scenes. Like it's not just talking in front of a mic. You have to do all the different planning and
Yeah.
different aspects of actually getting it out there and getting your branding.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have to like I didn't wear my merch in the podcast a couple weeks ago, And my manager was like, wear the sweater in your video, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, we're trying to move units. And I was like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, it's my thing. Like, obviously I want to sell merch, but I just forgot because that's important. Wear it. Like, rep your own stuff.
Yeah, show it
Of course.
off.
I didn't wear it today. Sorry.
It's okay.
So
We saw it
whoops.
before.
But yeah, a past project that I wish I could change.
Well, given that you have like your experience now, like new technologies, like know-how, like
Oh, I did an episode of my podcast with the worst audio ever. It was episode 100. It was with my two best friends. It was like the episode 100 special. Now it's a video. The audio was horrible, and I wish I could change it, but I can't.
okay. So, what are the advantages of having a podcast versus like other social media outlets? Because I know like Twitter Spaces just came out recently, and there is like the just audio aspect of that. But now podcasting could also have cameras.
Twitter Spaces aren't gonna last, and podcasts will last. And I just think that Twitter Spaces are fun because it's like you just get to hear the voice of someone you might interact with once in a while on the app. But like podcasts are just more personal. They're more like there's a podcast for everyone, which is so great. I'm scatterbrained. I talk like I've severe ADHD. People who can relate listen to me, which is great because like those are the kind of people I want to meet. But like there are people who listen to 4-hour-long podcasts talking about conspiracy theories, man. Like there's something for everybody. But like Twitter Spaces, it's a mess in there. That's what I think with my experience. I've had some fun in those, but also it's a mess. It's a bunch of people talking at once. I don't really know.
Podcasts are more like category, like organized.
Yeah, it's catered to so many different lanes and different personalities and different interests. Like it's great. Podcast is it's fun. It's just for everyone.
Do you think that Twitter bringing the podcast tab is like a good thing though, or
Um,
will it take away the market?
it will.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I don't know. Maybe, but also it could work out for a little bit. But then again, Twitter's Twitter. It's the worst app ever. But what we hate about it is what we love about it.
Do you think having a podcast is good for advertising your other social media outlets?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Because there's nothing wrong with cross promotion. It can be overdone, but there's nothing wrong with like promoting something there. Like I put a clip every time I upload a podcast. I take a clip of it. I just go into Final Cut Pro and I put like a maybe like a minute long kind of like highlight package, a quick like jump cut package of like the funny stuff that I cover, and it's just chaotic. And I put that on an Instagram post. And people seem to enjoy that. Because like you can't make anyone watch your stuff, but like you can shove it down their throat pretty good enough, and before they're like, all right, fine, I'll give it a watch.
Fine, I'll watch it.
Exactly. You
Or
can
I'll
just
listen to it.
Yeah, you can just be pretty relentless on the internet
Yeah.
if you want people to look at your stuff. You know what I mean?
And
And
I guess-
sometimes my attitude comes out, and I'm like, just watch it. Oh my god, please just watch my stuff.
And I guess we touched on this a bit, but audience engagement across like different social media platforms, like asking questions on, I guess Instagram stories have like ask a question here,
Yeah.
or Twitter you could like post a question and ask people to put in the comments or
Right.
something like that.
I think that's super smart, and I think that's so like anything with more interactive engagement, like anything with more of that, so more people can join in and like, because like I've seen friendships become a thing on Twitter, on Instagram. There's like people who've never, friendships are born. Two people could bond over my podcast. That'd be crazy, and become friends, and then like meet up one day. That's beautiful.
What do you think is the best app or anything to like edit a podcast? Maybe one for editing, one for maybe like sound effects. Like what are the techniques you use or the applications
I
you use?
don't have a lot of techniques. It's not very like I rarely edit my own podcast. I try to do one take because my podcast is like 30 minutes, sometimes 20. I've done one that's like 14 minutes before. Like, I don't know, whatever I'm feeling that day. And I try to do it one take. I've edited it before. I've cut some stuff out because of whatever, like dead air or something like that. But I just downloaded like Audacity. That was like one of the first audio editing softwares that I used when I was in like middle school, and it's still around, and I just use it. And I have
that's what we use.
the music for for my podcast is done by my friend, this guy Jake, that I used to work at a restaurant with, and like he just sent me these audio clips, and I just insert them before my audio. It's super easy. Like I never wanted to make that part hard for myself. because like that's just an added stress level. Is being like, okay, I got to be on, I have to be funny, I have to be engaging, but I don't want to be like, oh, I'm stressed about editing. I don't want to do that. So like learning how to edit's super important though, because like when I didn't know how, I was very stressed. But taking the time, like YouTube tutorials are so useful.
Yeah.
It's the greatest thing in the world. Because also that's how I learned how to use my microphone. Because I had a mic, like I'm historically bad with audio. Like old episodes of my podcast, it's so gainy. It's garbage. Like it's not, I don't sound good at all. And people are like, hey man, turn down your stuff. So I'm trying to listen on the bus and you're like screaming in my ear and stuff. So I learned, I just looked it up one day. I was like, oh, can I just learn how to use this mic that I have? And then Google it and it takes you to a YouTube tutorial. And then I found the perfect setting for the microphone that I have. And now it sounds money.
Money.
So now it sounds cash. So.
Sounds cash money.
Yeah, it's insane. It's literally butter.
What microphone do you use?
I think it's called it's the one that every YouTuber has, like the
Yeti?
Yeti. Yeah, it's a black one.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Our podcast is called Varsity Clues, on campus legends and myths. So we dive into just what's going on campus that you think is like a ghost story or haunted hallways, or that was our first episode on campus.
Yeah, and we have 3 episodes. So the first one is campus life. The second one, we're going to try and do like sports, rituals, and maybe some like myths and stuff or surrounding around like sports and like universities and colleges. And then the last one is like residence.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, our podcast, like we didn't really make a script for it. I kind of came up with the idea because I watched this documentary on Shudder, and it was about like how they made like horror movies, and like talked about like Linda Blair and how she did The Exorcist and like never did anything else after that because everyone thought she was like cursed.
Yeah.
So I got that because I'm like a horror movie like fanatic, so
Cool.
I wanted to know like more about like what else did they have? They had The Exorcist. They had a lot of the older ones like Jason, like Freddy Krueger, all my favorites. So I kind of took that idea, and then all of us were like, okay, we're either going to do a documentary film or we're going to do a podcast. So yeah, I don't really think we really made any scripts. I think the research part is probably the hardest. Well, I think that's it. I think we covered a lot of information.
I think we did
today.
too.
A lot of laughs. I think it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
That was a great time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Oh my god, anytime.
If you are someone who wants to start a podcast, here are 10 podcasting tips to get started. First, you want to pick a theme you're passionate about so you don't get bored of researching and talking about it.
The next one would be to invest in quality equipment. You don't need to break the bank to start, but make sure that the equipment that you're using is sufficiently up to date and good quality.
It's also important to record in a quiet environment because you may not have access to the most up-to-date technology. So make sure you record in a quiet environment to limit background noise.
The next thing you'll need is breath control and volume. Pronounce your words at a clear and comfortable pace. You want to be loud enough for the audience to hear you, but also at a good conversational pace.
Consistency is key. Whether your podcast is daily, weekly, or monthly, stick to a schedule so your audience members can know when to expect an episode to keep them listening long term.
You got to use good subtitles and key words. Include a brief description to give people an idea of what you're speaking about. You got to have key words that can help people find you and boost your success.
Also try to stay away from filler words like, and anyway.
If there's a visual aspect to your podcast, try not to touch your hair or fix your face too much.
Include music to your introduction to live up your podcast. Editing should be clear and consistent to be more captivating.
Finally, learn the art of conversation. If you have a co-host or guest, be a good listener and ask questions to keep things interesting. We hope these interviews inspired you and gave you more insight into the world of podcasting. We'd like to once again thank our guest speakers, Michael and Dean, for joining us, and you, the audience, for tuning in and engaging with us. Before you go, we want to share the trailer for our podcast, Varsity Clues, Myths and Legends. The podcast can be found on our website, emergeconference.ca.
The website will also have different platforms that you can access it on, so if you don't have Spotify, not to worry, there'll be other platforms that it will be uploaded to as well. We're going to dive into real life stories that have actually happened around some in Toronto.
Just your basic like run of the mill like
Yeah.
horror theme, yeah, like
Yeah.
the new Scream movie
That's
just came
one.
out, like that's it.
The dead roommate.
All students having their name whispered in the school while they're alone, flickering lights, a self-playing piano, like gusts of wind.
Statues come to life. The Halloween Massacre. So this is like Scream, kind of. Someone wears a mask. It's a Halloween party.
And then he removed the body and apparently buried her somewhere in Queen's Park, which lies across the street from the Victorian Mansion.
Older school.
That creeps me out.
I know.
man.
You know, like the Mona Lisa, how the eyes follow you around?
Yeah, like I would not go to a school like
Varsity Clues, Myths and Legends, an Emerge 2022 podcast, coming soon.